Okay. Oh, so has everyone got tea?
Absolutely.
Very important.
I drank all that. Or no drink.
Love. Or drink of choice.
I don't have a tea, but that's okay.
Oh.
Still allow that.
Maybe I'll get my son to make me a tea. Tea? Can you pop the kettle on and make me a tea? Thumbs up. Thumbs up.
Yay! We go. You've been initiated. Right. Well, it's traditional to sort of start off with a little poem that is in some way vaguely relevant to the story that I'm going to read. So this one is a kind of subtopic that's kind of slightly relevant to the story, which is the thing that a few people were kind of talking about when we were doing a previous topic requests thing, about like modern hunter-gathering. So, you know, when we go scrumping and stuff, and how satisfying that is. So it's in the story, but the poem is more focused on it, and this is called Roots. Haystack scents underfoot, earth solid and present, juice the child of the rain, and sweetness the child of the sun. A togetherness, drifting in the light air, flows through our veins with every fruit-stained mouthful, and earth joins freshness in the basket of edible treasure, herbs flavouring the sunlight, flowers to bring the sunlight inside. And as we tread the earth with appreciation and carry these treasures home, a fullness and excitement deep within us says, I know from what you've grown.
Oh.
So the story today is called The More Things Change, and it's a bit of a patchwork of things that different people requested. So usually we kind of have had the requests at the end of the previous story time, but we didn't this time because we had Mum's birthday story last time, and then we were talking about birthday things and stuff. It wasn't quite as much the normal story time routine, so I put out what do people want, and got quite a lot of different ones, so they kind of didn't tie together as much. So I put them together and ended up with something. So the request from Emily was for something about kind of stability and solid foundations. Mum wanted something about persistence and handling annoying bureaucracy. Claire just wanted a nice happy ending. And while I was waiting for requests, I'd already jotted down a few possibilities in case no one said anything. And my thing was coming to actually like and be fond of things that initially annoy or frustrate you. So I've managed to put that stuff together, hopefully. The rain on the glass sparkled and drove glistening pathways, magical rivers, down the panes of the sash window. Abby sat with the patchwork rug on like a dress at the tiny window desk, listening to the purr of the thunder as she looked past the droplets to the fields outside. Her reflection kept catching her eye when she blinked, drawing her gaze back to the sparkling glass. The short, spiked hair with blue in the ends that her boss at the post office gave dirty looks, as if to say, come on, you're 31 now. And the blue agate droplet earrings she only took out to sleep. Whatever, she thought, repeatedly, returning her attention to outside. The loft room was lit dimly by the bedside lamp, and small enough to be warmed quickly by the little heater Shen had brought up for her. And as Abby leaned her elbows on the white-painted wood and rested her chin in her palms, she found herself feeling peaceful. The big old farmhouse below was steadfast in the storm, the furious wind that shook the banks of lavender like a soft grey turbulent ocean, not so much as causing a creak. Had she put all her misgivings about staying here aside, Abby wondered. After all, it hadn't exactly been a planned visit. She sighed and opened her email on her phone, hoping for a message from the new estate agent. You wouldn't think that a transfer of ownership from one landlord to another in which the new landlord was perfectly happy to have the tenant remain, should affect the tenant at all, would you? Abby rolled her eyes to herself. Unfortunately, in her case, the new landlord was travelling abroad, wanted to repeat all the initial inspections, wanted to switch Abby to a new estate agent, and terminate the current rental contract and make her own, all of which meant that Abby's insurance needed redoing, and on the whole it was just safer and easier to effectively move out for a while and move back in later, once the new estate agent had everything signed. Shen and Ned lived in the almost country, just outside town, not so far that the bus didn't come most of the way, and they had a small farm. Abby was back at uni, refocusing what had been a veterinary science degree towards biology more concerning plants. It wasn't that her first experiences of working in a vet had been all bad, but in the final week of her first contract, a particularly uncuddly cat had bitten her and given her an infection, and the other staff on shift had let her handle shouting customers whose python and rat had had a waiting room altercation. Abby thought that Flora was rather less likely to cause disputes, and if it ever bit her, it would probably be her own fault. The farm made a good impromptu placement. Avocados, strawberries, herbs and sunflowers. Abby recalled Shen whispering, her eyes sparkling, when she and Ned had first bought the place. It wasn't always a good idea to stay with friends. I could have gone to Mum and Dad's, she reminded herself, thinking back to when she'd decided. Shen had been saying for ages that Abby could come and stay for a weekend, get involved with the farm. Did she mind that it was more like a month? Shen never minded anything much, as long as people didn't talk about heirloom tomatoes or say that dishes should be put away. Abby had learned those ones the hard way. After the first week, Abby had been sure she wouldn't stay a second. It was all Ned's weird habits that were just so ingrained in how the house ran. The staircase that led from the dining area up to the loft, where Abby was staying, was not a washing line, she'd pointed out, when she emerged the first morning to find socks and underwear hanging underfoot. Ned was only very briefly put off, however. As soon as it rained, Abby's staircase was home to drying socks again, and at 10:30 in the evening, when she was settling down with a book, the pad of socked feet right up by her door told her Ned was selecting socks from this haphazard laundry area. "Hello, I can hear you on my staircase," she'd called, and had to correct herself. It wasn't hers, really. Apparently the socks selected at night had a special purpose, Shen had explained with a smile. The pair was separated and one used as a sleep mask to keep the morning sun in the lace-curtained back bedroom out of Ned's eyes. The lonely pair went on the bedside table, which is where Grease, the medium-sized scruffy dog of mixed heritage, got them from.
No, dude.
After navigating the slippery slope of drying washing to get down to breakfast on the first Saturday, Abby had been greeted by the sight of Grease, with a sock comically draped out of his mouth like a great navy tongue. "Grease, give me that." She tried to open the shaggy-haired jaws and prise the sock away, but Grease growled and held on, the black spot on the end of his nose, that Ned referred to as the grease spot, quivering and bristling. "He won't let you have it," Shen had sighed, shaking her head but clearly not especially concerned. "Leave him be and it will turn up in a few days buried in the chicken coop." As Abby opened her mouth to protest, thinking the pets couldn't be any worse behaved, there was a clicking, scratching sound, and a chicken appeared at the back door and pecked on the glass panel in it as if knocking. Abby looked at Shen incredulously, but Shen was busy adding to her leaning tower of dishes, carefully dumping her wet, newly washed porridge bowl and spoon on top of last night's dry saucepans, in a carefully constructed draining board art installment. "Would you like some raisin toast?" Shen asked, Abby turning to her with a beaming smile. "That's going to fall down!" Abby launched herself at the dish pile, grabbing at the newly balanced layer. Look, let me dry these things that were dry before and put them away. Shen's chest expanded suddenly in a huff of indignant breath. That is so unnecessary. I'm making sure nothing's dirty. Who cares if there's a few clean things lying around to dry? What, you're picking on my adulting skills already? She shoved the dish sponge behind the tap like a child throwing a toy to the ground. Abby stood wide-eyed with shock and unsure what to say, until Ned appeared and came to her rescue. Shen, you're not getting scary with our guest about dishes, are you? He put his arm around his wife. Don't worry, Abby. The pile won't fall. Shen is a master. He picked up a basket from the counter. How about we go and do some picking? There are some apples ripe up along the fence in the north field. Shen beamed and Abby shrugged and followed, the dishes apparently forgotten. It was the picking that had convinced Abby a few more nights wouldn't be so bad. The air in the fields was rich with the smell of hay wet with dew and light autumn rain, and the sun creeping around the edges of the clouds, shy but not quite hidden. It wasn't only the apples. There were blackberries restrained in brick-walled beds, of which they ate almost as many as they picked, their hands staining magenta and purple, and lips brightly painted. Kale and leeks grew near the house, with parsley and caraway, and by late morning the basket was a colourful marketplace stall of grown treasures. It's so satisfying to feel like hunter-gatherers, Abby said on the walk back to the house. It's as though we have some primal instinct for this. That statement returned to her now as she sat watching the rain, so satisfied and calmed by the house's resilience to the storm. This is like that too, she mused, the instinctual appreciation for good shelter. Then she thought of her own shelter, abandoned and empty while she sat here. She opened her email again and typed a reply to the most recent message she'd had from the agent. Hi, Julie. Just wondering if you have any news for me on the progress of the handover. I'm staying with friends at the moment, just to be on the safe side, since there's no current paperwork. But obviously I'd like to get back to normal as soon as possible. Many thanks, Abby. She hit send and inspected her reflection in the glass again. Should she grow out the blue? Whatever. The sound of Ned choosing socks for his nightly ritual pricked at her patience, but she kept quiet. There was no point trying to change it now. Yet something about steeling herself to push the estate agent made her want to see if she could sort out some of the household habits too. In the morning, she'd have a talk with Ned about washing. Her phone pinged. A reply from Julie already. Hi, Abby. Unfortunately, the new landlord is still in Singapore, so we haven't got her signature yet. I'll let you know as soon as everything is in place. Kind regards, Julie. Oh, so helpful. Didn't this woman have an electronic signature that would do for now? Abby hit reply. Hi, Julie. If the new landlord intends to stay in Singapore a while, perhaps an electronic signature could be obtained, at least temporarily. I look forward to hearing from you. Best wishes, Abby. She drew in a breath and wrapped the patchwork rug tightly. This was far too much adulting for one day. There was no such quick reply this time, so after a half hour of rain watching and scrolling through Twitter, Abby went to bed. When the sun rose on the farm, you had to wake up. As Abby rubbed her eyes and turned over to contemplate the ceiling, squinting from the brightness, she momentarily felt some sympathy for Ned's sock habit. Grease scampered up the stairs outside the door and sat whining, his wagging tail thumping about the walls of the tiny landing. She just knew he had a sock. Pulling on some track pants, she thudded heavy-footed to the door and opened it to stare down at the dog. Grease, she said, seriously. By the time I go back to my place, you will not be stealing socks anymore. It's not acceptable. You hear me? Drop it. She pointed at the floor. Grease growled. No. Drop it. Drop the sock. Grease inched away from her and moved down a step. He let go of the sock. Then he grabbed a fresh one from the step and raced down in the direction of the kitchen. "Ah!" exclaimed Abby, shutting the door. She looked at the wardrobe. Was it early enough that Shen and Ned might still be asleep down there and not hear the sound the door made, which was so close to a person passing wind? Abby took a breath and opened the wardrobe. There were fart noises. "Oh, Abby, too many chickpeas," came Ned's voice from downstairs. Abby winced. "Joke is old on account of being from year 9 at school," she yelled back, pulling out her post office uniform. Downstairs, a chicken had managed to slip in when Shen was emptying the teapot, and was chasing Grease around the kitchen at breakneck speed, clucking and pecking at the dog's shaggy tail. Abby dodged them narrowly and sat down by the raisin toast Shen had made without asking. "I really think the chickens need to learn to stay out," she exclaimed, trying not to squash any animals as she pulled in her chair. Shen rolled her eyes. "Our life is exciting. You're a visitor." She got Abby the margarine.
That's good.
Ned's reaction to Abby's sock challenge was similar, and Abby left for her shift cursing. Perhaps she ought to go to Mum and Dad's after all. On the bus back from the post office, Abby's phone pinged. "Hi, Abby. The new landlord has sent us through an electronic signature, as you suggested. Let us know if you can come in tomorrow afternoon to sign. Kind regards, Julie." Abby burst in the back door of the farmhouse and narrowly missed a chicken. "Shen! I get to sign tomorrow. I should be out of your hair by Wednesday." Shen looked up from the sink where she was preparing additions to the tower, slightly shocked. "Oh, we'll miss you," she said, putting the plate she was washing slowly back into the suds. Then she quite literally shook herself, swinging her head and shoulders in a fast little flick. "What am I saying? Congratulations, you sorted out the tedious bureaucrats." She dried her hands and came over to give Abby a hug. On Wednesday morning, Abby climbed very cautiously down the sock-covered staircase with her bags and laptop case, going one step at a time for fear of socks being the real-life equivalent of cartoon banana peel. As she glared down at them, the comedy of the moment struck her with a touching clarity, and she smiled and chuckled at a pair of boxes on the banister. At breakfast, Shen predicted her choice of raisin toast and made her a farewell hot chocolate, and Abby gave her crusts to a chicken, sternly looking it in the eye as far as you could a chicken that was turning its head to see a crust on the floor. "I don't approve of you in here," Abby told it, "but I'll miss you." She felt a thick sadness welling up and turned away. How strange that the same quirks of a place that made you shout one week could make you sad to leave it the next. Shen and Ned sat down either side of her and enveloped her in a group hug. "Come back any time," Ned told her. "We'll tell you when the avocado harvest is. After all, it's relevant to your studies." He winked, implying that Abby would be a free farmhand, but Abby, to her surprise, didn't mind. Abby returned 2 weeks later for the long weekend. Shen had said afternoon tea would be served for all who helped cut the sunflower heads. Abby approached from the kitchen side. A chicken could be seen, pecking its way around the counter, and another was waiting patiently outside the door. Abby stepped in with the second chicken in tow and looked past the leaning tower of dishes to see Grease, who was lying on the floor, doing his best to shred a sock, while Ned, who was laying some avocados needed ripening on the windowsill, was studiously pretending not to have noticed. Abby put her hands on her hips, looking from the dishes, to Ned, to Grease, to the chickens, and back again. "Oh," she said, smiling wryly. "Excitement." She dropped her bag on a chair where it was out of reach of chicken beaks and Grease's nose. "Evidently, I can change my new real estate agent's methods, But persistence alone is not enough to change anything in this house. Shen looked up and laughed, gleefully adding an extra bowl to the precarious construction on the drain board.
I love it.
If we changed, you'd miss all this, she told Abby, coming over to hug her. Abby rolled her eyes, but deep down she had a feeling Shen was spot on.
Oh, that's true.
That was brilliant.
Well done, patchwork, my God.
It is a patchwork. There's a lot of bits of different real things in there.
Yeah.
I was watching you recognising them.
Yeah. Oh,
So-
that was stuff.
The staircase as a laundry is a thing that my grandparents used to do. They
Yes.
had a staircase that wasn't like filled in between the steps, so they'd hang things from there in the winter, and there'd be all this washing up the stairs.
Because the fire was under the stairs.
Yeah, so it was a good place for drying actually, because the hot air would come up from the fireplace.
Yeah.
I was going to say I love that because we use our staircase as a bit of a clothes horse as well. So that was, I was like,
Oh,
oh,
it's not unique.
I've currently got a sheet hanging off
Yeah.
the TV at the moment, so
Yeah, we put ours on our doors because we don't have any outside, because we don't have a balcony even. So we can't. If we put them on the air, we've got to dry them one at a time, and no other washing can go there. So we use our doors. Everyone's covered in
We-
sheets.
Desperate.
Yeah.
You can't keep things dry outside because we don't use tumble dryers or anything. So we use airers all over the room, and I use the curtain rods in our study, which there are 4 of those. So I use the curtain rods, and I use the doors, and I use the bookcases, which are, separate,
Yeah.
large.
giving me ideas now. This is great.
Right, try
We're all just learning how to dry our washing. This is just a lesson in adulting when the weather is
Yeah.
wet.
It just doesn't look like adulting when anybody walks
No.
in. No. It doesn't look convincingly like you can manage your house when your fitted sheet is over your bookcase and
Yeah. Yeah, I had that. I had the air up and sheets on every door and towels on some chairs. And
describing
I
my
was
house.
doing exercise with Netflix on the laptop, like sitting on the couch, and my breakfast sitting there. And the neighbour knocked on the door because she'd locked herself out. And I had to bring her in and loan her my phone and look up like her estate agent's phone number and stuff.
Excellent.
And I'm thinking, oh. And I'm in like baggy pants and a crop top with my hair like just got out of bed.
Look,
Keep it real.
look, and she
that's
went.
right.
She went home feeling incredibly competent and like,
Well, I don't know, because she'd come out of her house and shut the door that's a deadlock, and she didn't even have shoes on. So she was supposed to be leaving for work, but it was just her in a dress, and she had no shoes, no keys, no phone, no purse. And
I know, but
He was having a day.
walking into that made her feel a whole lot better about
yeah, I probably did. Yeah,
it. But that wasn't
it wasn't the worst thing. Yeah. No, I wouldn't be surprised if hers looked similar when it in trying to dry washing, because it is very hard in these tiny places.
Are you going to
Yeah.
the responsibility for the leaning tower of dishes? Is
That's
that you?
me. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's Lloyd's unfavourite thing that I do, that I care more about not having any dirty dishes than about
Yes.
putting away clean dishes. So it doesn't matter if I don't have very much time and there's a load of stuff on the draining board that is dry, I will get it wet again by putting the wet clean dishes on top and
Oh,
just
dear.
let the whole
Mhm.
lot dry and then put them away later, because I'd rather make sure there wasn't like smelly food bits and like dirty plates sitting
Yep.
there
Yeah.
than spend the time to put away the clean stuff. But
Can
Yes.
Lloyd is like, but now that's wet again because you put that on it. And
See,
I'm like, who cares?
Yeah.
You don't have a chicken in your kitchen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chicken.
Yeah.
Kitchen needs a chicken.
Oh, Mum and Dad at one stage did come close to getting a chicken in the kitchen. They had some chickens
Oh,
for,
wow.
and the chickens did come to the door and look inside as though they would have quite liked to go in. They didn't actually
did.
come
We
in.
did try to get in once. We had to stop.
Let's put our foot in the way. But yeah, we had chickens which we inherited from my brother, and they had
Oh, wow.
they'd been got as chicks, and the little girls, my brother's children, had handled them from very young, so they were very accustomed to people, and they liked people quite a lot. And we had a very big yard, and they had a very, very big enclosure. And we would let them out into the yard as well. But they also developed Houdini-like abilities to escape any, enclosure you had. And one morning we were having breakfast, and one of them appeared at the back door, which means, it's the back door is well off the ground. It would be 6 feet off the ground. No, not so far, 5 feet from the ground. And there's a ramp up to a back veranda. So the chicken had come from the bottom of the yard all the way up the yard and up the ramp and across the veranda to look in the back door. And it was a very comical thing. And once it happened once it happened once, it kept happening then, didn't it? I love the line about the trying to look the chicken sternly in the eye. When that's hard, that thing they
Yeah.
do. Chickens just make me laugh.
Hilarious.
They're really funny.
Oh, funny. Funny
As
animals.
a child, Stratton Street, my mum kept ducks. They never got children.
Did the ducks try to come in the house?
The ducks did, in fact, come in the house, and not as a coming backwards and forwards like your chickens, but my dad always had those closers on doors, and they're quite slow.
Oh, yeah, so the duck would just get through when the door...
Ducks would do the wild dash to duck around the door, but the closing had been. That was a bit of a thing, and you develop this thing of putting your foot to like stop duck coming in
while the door's shutting, yeah.
the washing basket, keep the duck out, And in fact, we took a duck away once on holiday. So my dad, just for Jane and Claire, my dad had a VW Beetle, and so that we were family with the 2 parents and 3 children. We had a border collie dog who sat over the back of the back seat where there's this very small, and that sat around the back seat with its head, whatever. And we had a duckling in a cage. I'm not sure why that particular duckling needed to come on holiday, but it did. And so we had a bird cage on our lap in the back.
And then all of your, own bags and stuff to go.
Well,
I just love
You
it.
probably didn't take very much
Oh,
stuff.
no, we mustn't have taken very much stuff, and I don't want to leak or whatever, and God knows where we are. I can't even remember that, but I just do.
What did the duck do while you were...
I don't know why we thought we had to do that.